identity. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm punk because this is the magazines I read, and these are the ways that I've dressed, and this is the things that I like. I had a lack of information, so I'd listen to the music, but I had no way of physically connecting other than the sound that was in my ear. I don't belong to the punks. I don't belong to the rockers. I don't belong to the rappers. I don't belong to anybody. It's whoever needs it has it, and that's where I leave it at. I'm Jean Dawson, and you're tuned in to Carbon Sound. Yeah, it's one of my biggest inspirations. I'm actually staying in an extra day to go to Paisley Park. I mean, everything that Prince embodied, from music business to sound structure to being so like genre fluid, like really informed me early on like the capabilities of one person or a person with a lot of collaborators. Like Paisley Park would be like my mecca of music per se. I don't know, everything, all of it. I'm like really into the nuance of everything. So anything that I can catch with like the corner of my eye is really like things that I'm kind of looking forward to. But I don't know, everything. I really love the slave written face Prince era. Felt like there was a lot of like contention there. No, every era of Prince is kind of like my favorite. Last thing I need before a show is some jumping jacks. Like I usually like jump up and down to get my blood going a little bit. It'll probably be a smoke. I'll step outside, have a cigarette before I talk to anybody else, and then compose myself, and then I'm back to normal. Like I have to turn it off and then turn it back on. They came out. They came out like real organic. You know, Isaiah Rashad was really early on with like showing me a level of support. And then I met George Clanton through one of my managers because I was like a really big supporter, and I am a really big supporter. George doesn't do features, so I was like, yeah, I need that, and not just because he doesn't do them, just because his voice is so special to me. And then Earl came about through our mutual friend Garrett, who is in the band or is the band Trash Talk with Lee Spielman. And he introduced me and Earl knowing that I was like a really big Earl head. Like, I don't know. I've been listening to Earl since I mean, we're about the same age. He's probably like a year or two older than me, but I wanted to be him so bad when I was young. And now obviously I found my way. But we ended up becoming friends, and that turned into like a beautiful collaboration. And I'm really, really still starstruck when I talk to him about normal things. Yeah, he has really strong opinions about a lot of different things, and he'll stand on his opinions. And a lot of times he's going to make you feel really dumb because he's a really, really intelligent person. Like, I think people understand that he's an intelligent person, but like, I think his like genius is really, really not necessarily not talked about, but that dude is very like not only academically smart or like analytically intelligent, he's also street smart, but that dude's analytical intelligence is crazy. A lot of it, I'm very thankful. I mean, even my band that I'm playing with today, a lot of them worked on the album, and everybody that worked on the project that played an instrument, there's nothing that their instrument can hide from them. And I really look for that in people that I collaborate with, where I'm like, you know that instrument through and through. And I was very, very thankful and very lucky to be able to work with Austin Corona, Wyatt Bernard, Zach Fogarty. There's only like 6, 7 producers on the entire album, counting myself. Ray Brady, Johan Lennox, who did the string arrangements, who's just a master at that. Everybody that had a part to play, I felt like we all knocked our egos out, and it was just like, this is a labor of love. So we spent a lot of time on the like details. And that's one of my biggest things as somebody that was executively producing, is making sure that everybody felt comfortable enough to speak, and everybody had a seat at the table to make a decision. So while we're working on the record, it was really, really important for me for everybody to feel heard. So there was a lot of contentious arguments about why this part is wrong and why this part is right, but it was all like sharpening swords to make something we all consider beautiful. And it ended up creating kind of a really funny dynamic within our friend group of like us all being 7-year-olds that are arguing about these musical things that the biggest thing that I put towards them, I was like, you just pretend that this is the thing that you wanted to play when you were 7, but didn't have the ability to. And now you have the ability to. And that's how we got a lot of the guitar solos and a lot of just like the ideas that came from it. The chaotic nature of like it not necessarily standing on one precipice. All the people that worked on it listened to me be a little bit crazy for several months, and it came out beautifully. I think 7-year-old Jean Dawson, more than anything, is like an inquisitive kid. So I as a 7-year-old, wanted to know everything. And it became annoying because I was never a know-it-all. I was actually the opposite. I wanted to be a know-nothing. But what that let me understand is that I had all to learn. So making this project, I kind of dismissed everything that I thought I knew because there's a level of ego and knowledge. And not saying that I had to be kind of innocuous to my own information, but the possibilities. And when you're 7, you see sand, but you don't see sand, you see a sandcastle. It's like there's the materials, but what you're going to do with it is kind of the thing that makes it more interesting. And that was kind of the ethos working on the project. It was like, we have all these tools now that we're grown up, and it's like, how can we have fun with them without being constrained by the idea of what we need to do or what is? So one of my biggest things was talking about not being chained to our own perception or what people will perceive. It's like understanding that their perception doesn't have to live in our minds, and our minds don't have to live in their perception. So it became kind of a thing that I was really adamant about, or I'm like, we don't know anything. We have an idea of things, but the less we know, the more we're going to be funded the ideas that we can do whatever we want. I have masters working on that project, like masters of instruments, masters of production. They felt comfortable enough with me to be like, okay, I'm going to listen to you, even though I know more than you. I know 100 times more than you about this thing. But what makes, I guess, the 7-year-old me important in that is that everything is unassuming. There's no assumption that something has to be something. It's all like, what does your imagination say? In like a really cliche way, what's going to make you happy right now? And we leaned into that to the farthest extremes of we could think of. And that's how Chaos Now was born, I think. It's the opposite. Not that I don't want them to feel anything. I don't want to dictate. I don't want to dictate anything. I merely see myself as a supplement to life. It's just like in a very small fractalized supplement to where if you're taking a walk and you decide to spend 3 minutes listening to whatever I did, whatever that supplements, hopefully it galvanizes your thoughts in a way where it comes together in a way that you want it to. I don't want to make a sad song played in any minor key for the fact that I want you to cry. I want you to be able to decide what you want. And I think Prince was a master at that. I think there were so many Prince records where you're like, I don't know if I should dance, cry, scream, run, because it's not dictated. I love pop music to death, but I also think that there's something very sterile about, like, here's this formulaic BPM that's going to make you move your feet. This is supposed to make you forget about your day. This is supposed to make you, like, you're on the car ride to your work, and on your car ride to your work, we want you to not think about the 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours you're going to spend doing this job that you don't really like. So we're going to give you a record that makes you negate the life that you live. And a lot of times that's where the sugar and pop comes from. And for me, that's just as important as, hey, if you're not having a good time right now in life, that's okay. Feel everything. It's one of the pleasures of being alive. It's one of the pleasures of life being something that's forever changing. But it's hard because I don't like making sad music either. But if somebody feels sad listening to it, then, that's their prerogative. But I have no expectations for people listening to the music at all. I don't even have expectations for people to listen to the music, period. So when they do, it's just an honor for me. When I did have it, I didn't have cable growing up. Couldn't afford it. So I was always really watching whatever was on public access. But when I did have MTV, yeah, I mean, I liked the idea of like, whoa, this artist looks like this and this looks like this. But I think something really, really beautiful came from the fact that I had no idea what artists look like or what they dress like. So I didn't have an assumption of character. So it kind of informed my identity because it didn't inform my identity. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm punk because this is the magazines I read, and these are the ways that I've dressed, and this is the things that I like. I had a lack of information, so I'd listen to the music, but I had no way of physically connecting other than the sound that was in my ear. Whereas, I have friends that are like, no, I'm fully this guy that's informed by this music. So I feel like what it did for me is it allowed it to be more of like a chameleon. Like that's why when people come to the shows, you'll never know what they look like because I don't belong to a scene. I don't belong to the punks. I don't belong to the rockers. I don't belong to the rappers. I don't belong to anybody. It's whoever needs it has it, and that's where I leave it at. So to answer your question, yeah, I was a fan of MTV to a certain extent. I mean, by the time I was like 15, we had MTV Jams, and I would be like, "Whoa, that's cool." And like, mixing mediums for me is a little hard. Like that's why I have a hard time doing music videos. I love doing them, but they all come from film or like animation rather than just like another music video that I've seen. That's why people are like, "Oh, I've never seen your music videos like this." I'm like, because my reference isn't music videos. My reference is something completely different. Spike Jonze, the director, is a very big reference for me. The way that he approached different genres of movies, and like did Jackass to doing, Her, and things like that. So like, he's always been a very important director in my eyes. Joaquin Phoenix, not necessarily being a director, but being an actor is also very important to me on a lot of different levels. And it's like miscellaneous things that inspire the music or inspire the music videos. A lot of it's like anime, like Japanese animation, from like old 70s, 80s animation to more modern stuff, the way that they, have color and identity and everything has a certain tonality. For me, that was super important. And it all translates, for me at least in my head, to like an anime thing. But I don't expect people to see that or even like resonate with that. It's just more of like, that's my library and that's what I go to when I'm like, this scene needs to be more science fiction, but I don't want it to be human science fiction. I want it to be cartoony. That's why I have a deer in the hood where I'm like, one of the coolest things Aaron Magruder ever did for me was like making Boondocks something that felt so akin, but also like, whoa, this is super Japanese at the same time, and then super Americanized, and there was so much nuance of like American culture. I feel like he really leaned into the nuance of what it meant to be like a black kid with an older brother or a younger brother. And I'm still consistently getting inspired by things. I'm just finding them as they come. My favorites don't necessarily change. I have like a top that kind of stays the top because it's almost impossible to beat them. And I'm sure somebody will, but it's kind of like, what's better than Purple Rain? You know what I mean? It's kind of that kind of question where it's like, fuck, I don't know what to say. But right now, I mean, on tour, we're watching Cowboy Bebop. Like, some of the guys on the tour have never seen it. So I'm just like, yeah, this is the chance for me to lock you in a car for several hours and you have to watch this thing that inspires me a lot. A lot of Sugar Free, a lot of DJ Quick, a lot of Ice Cube. I mean, the list, everything that like is now considered classic, I guess. And it can go as far as like all the Battle Cat stuff, all the like everybody that Snoop worked with. All that stuff was really informative to me when I was a kid. A lot of it taught me melody, which is a funny thing. West Coast hip hop was really melodic. Everything that was coming was like, we want to dance, but also you might get shot. So there's like this cool change of character there that I think still resonates with me. And I guess part of the reason why I'm like, I don't classify myself as like a rocker or a rapper or anything. It's because there's so much like, there was so much stuff that influenced the West, like Daz or Zapp and Roger, where I'm like, these guys were in the future, literally. And I can't describe what they were doing other than it's like black electronic music. But also they're singing these beautiful ballads. So it's kind of hard to decide. So a lot of that stuff still sticks with me to this day, for sure. I mean, finessed FAFSA, that's what we had, and my loans, and I still owe that money, and I should probably pay it. All the money that I was getting was for whatever I needed at the time, whether it was a flight to a place and I was not buying books for school because I thought that was a finesse. And I was I was really into myself in college, like in a bad way, where I had like a weird chip on my shoulder that I was trying to figure out because I was growing up and I didn't necessarily have a group. Like I didn't hang out, like my roommate was a basketball player, and he was so different from all the basketball players, and not in a good or bad way. But me and him would watch SpongeBob while people are like getting drunk and partying and stuff. Which, if you're getting drunk and partying, cool, good on you. And not saying that people need to go and watch cartoons and infantilize themselves. But I was in a weird place in college, so I spent a lot of my time circumventing being an adult and like into myself in terms of like I thought I was like superior because I wasn't doing the same thing as the college kids around me which is super wrong. It's just everybody's growing up and they're doing things like I grew up really fast. So a lot of the things that they were doing in college and they were figuring out, I had done in ninth grade because I didn't have the same kind of structure as a lot of kids. I had my independence really early on because my mom was always at work. So my life was always dictated by me. But by the time I got to college, I'm like trying to reverse and trying to like be a kid while everybody's trying to be an adult. So I started to be like, oh, partying is stupid. Drinking is stupid. You guys are getting drunk. You're wasting your parents' money. So I had like a really big chip on my shoulder to now where I'm like, that was dumb. I wish I would have taken more time to try to experience those things with, the people I was going to school with instead of trying to separate myself because it made it very lonely. And my college experience is very different because I spent a lot of time just ruminating in my own thoughts, whereas I probably should have been socializing a lot more. But I mean, it gave birth to my first project, which was Bad Sports. And I made that in my dorm room with one guy, and that was what I did in college until I dropped out. So if I could go back, I probably should have just been going out and not thinking so much about things and not being so heady about everything. Yeah, I was able to fund, specific things because I was going to school and I was figuring out ways to circumvent costs with tuition money because my parents didn't give me any tuition money. We didn't have any money. So I was using my loans and stuff for things that I could have used for school, but I also figured out ways to go around buying $400 books. Love it more than it's ever going to love you. It's never going to love you as much as you love it. And that's how it has to be. You have to be able to do it for free for a long time before anybody's going to give you any dollar for it. And you also have to really care about it. It's like a baby. It's like when it's with you, it's with you. So you can't just shove it off. It's like if it's in you, it's in you. And you can't wear it. It's not on you. So as long as you feel that it's like through and through to you, then it'll make sense and things will work out in the ways that they need to work out. Nothing more, nothing less. Whatever you put in is what you'll get out. So if you work hard and you give it more hours than anybody else will, then you'll see the fruits of that. Don't expect nothing from it. Music is like a being. It's like the expectation of anything for music other than to give you happiness. It's one of the greatest gifts we have as humans. So if you want to make music, make music. It's there for us to make. I think everybody should. What you appreciate it with is, what it'll be. I still feel like I'm rediscovering my inner child as I'm discovering my inner adult at the same time. And it's like a constant communication between the two. My inner child makes me happy-go-lucky, makes me not care about a lot of things, makes me very irresponsible at times. And then my inner adult is like that, but magnified in a different way because it can become dangerous because I can't be irresponsible. I have 4 dogs. Like, I have to look at life in a certain aspect, but the child in me and the adult in me are consistently arguing about what's important. So one day I'm just like, I'm going to talk to nobody and I'm going to go for a walk and I'm just going to look at all the colors. And then there's another day where I'm like, I need to talk about my taxes for 4 hours today, about all the money that needs to get spent for certain things of this business to keep it running. And then the inner child in me is like, but why don't you just sit at home and watch cartoons all day and not do nothing else? That'd be tight, right? I'm like, yeah, it would be. But like, in order for us to do that, I have to do this. So I think I'm in touch with my inner child just as much as I'm getting in touch with my inner adult. I'm learning how to do both at the same time. Oh man, just having more life. Having this gift that I get to wake up every day and be like, whoa, I get another chance to do better than I did yesterday in whatever facet that is, whether it's being a nicer person, a more kind person, a more stern person, the gift that I get to like really move forward. So like getting older for me is the best. I mean, there's so many people that are my age that would have been my age that are gone. Tupac gone. There's a lot of artists that didn't make it to where I'm at now, and not necessarily in stature, but in age. So I'm very thankful. Only two things: family and music. And family doesn't mean that we share the same blood. Family is we share a communication that's like beyond words.